I have to share with you a threat, because what we're facing right now in agriculture with the advent of Roundup-resistant weeds, Dow AgroSciences and Monsanto are now proposing 2,4-D and dicamba-ready crops. And what these crops will do is they will tank mix glyphosate and 2,4-D, or glyphosate and dicamba, and apply that to the corn and soybean crops. And at the very beginning, we showed you a slide of our 480 acres, just part of one section of land. We're surrounded by GMO soy and corn. And so what wakes me up at 3 o'clock at night and keeps me awake for the rest of the night is thinking about the viability of our farm if those crops are approved and released. And I can tell you, we've seen enough herbicide damage on our farm to know that there is no way that our farm will be viable. Not the crops that we raise. We raise highly sensitive crops to these two chemicals. They are not 2,4-D and dicamba ready. And to be honest, neither are we. We don't know if we actually want to live out there. On the conversation on the road, on the way down, we have 7.5 hours in the car. And we were asking ourselves the question, if these crops are released, do we want to live out there? And part of my comment about the tank mixing is that scientists are telling us that you tank mix glyphosate and 2,4-D, and it's way more destructive than either glyphosate or 2,4-D by themselves. So if that stuff moves and you get hit with drift, there's no recovery from that. There's issues for certification, issues for plant resilience. Even if you get hit with a slight amount of drift, there's documentation that a slight amount of drift will result in plant diseases. So maybe the drift won't kill the plant, but it'll cripple it enough that plant disease will take a hold and take it out. And so even though we've built this wonderfully diverse, wonderfully resilient system that is based on stewarding the ecology of the land and the life that is under our care, there is no way that we can protect our farm and our crops from the introduction of these two crops. So there are petitions being circulated throughout this conference. There's one at the Moses booth. There's one at our booth, Prairie Road Organic Seed, C9. We implore you to please sign those petitions. But when you sign those petitions, don't think your job is done. Because what I'm asking you to do is, by signing that petition, you are pledging that you will take an active role and be an active citizen, as Melinda had stated earlier, and make those phone calls to our decision makers. Write in comments to USDA. Right now there's an open comment period for coexistence of GMO and organic agriculture and non-GMO agriculture. So there's a comment period that closes March 4th, so you've got a very short window. And then the other comment period that is open is on the USDA Environmental Impact Study on 2,4-D ready crops, proposed by Dow AgroScience. The next step for the 2,4-D ready crops is a draft environmental impact study from the EPA. So the USDA only had to look at whether or not the seed itself posed a plant or disease pest problem. So that's the only thing they've tasked themselves with. You look at the mission of USDA, it's absolutely absurd that that's the only thing they have to look at in terms of whether or not they should deregulate these crops. So now the EPA will be the next step. They'll come out with their draft environmental impact study, and there'll be a comment period for that. And all of you who remember the advent of the National Organic Program, how many of you wrote in comments to that? So you're familiar with this process. If you have never written in comments, please plug into the organizations that will help you make comments to the USDA. And if you have GMO crops anywhere near you, I guarantee you this will reach out and touch you. It will devastate you. Organic crops and 2,4-D and dicamba-ready crops cannot coexist. Coexistence is a complete lie. And Melinda and I are doing a session tomorrow at 1:30, right after lunch. It's over in the Radisson Room Y, I believe is the number. And if you want to hear more about it, we'll talk about the rhetoric around GMOs and also the impact on agriculture. So I hate to close on a note of throwing cold water on all of you, but it doesn't matter if you're raising seed crops, gardening, raising a vineyard, have trees that you care about surrounding your farmstead. Basically, what was the word you used? We will have a burnt earth policy.
It's a scorched earth policy.
This is what USDA is proposing. So if you are not 2,4-D and dicamba ready, you yourself personally, and if the crops and the farms that are under your care are not 2,4-D and dicamba ready, you need to raise your voice and speak out. We've got very little time. The USDA at the biotech industry meeting, stakeholders meeting they held in January, said that they will clear the pipeline of any GMO crops that have been petitioned for release by the end of 2014. So they will approve these crops by the end of 2014. That means they will be in the field in 2015. I can tell you more horror stories and more information about what's going on around those issues. Please, if you're interested, come and attend Melinda and my session. But yes, this keeps me awake at night.
But remember, like Melinda said, the hope is in this room.
The hope is in this room. So align yourself with groups like the Pesticide Action Network, the Center for Food Safety. Moses has an action page on this. Pay attention. Pay attention. Use every possible opportunity that you have to raise your objection to this. Call your state ag departments, your representatives, any leader you can think of that should be doing something about this. So thank you.